Solve by factorization, you say. Okay, we can't use completing the square, we can't use the quadratic formula, we've got to use factorization. Although I'll talk about a little sneak method that you can use if you really struggle with factorization at the end. Right, this kind of question, to factorize it, it's going to have to go into double brackets. It's a quadratic, there's no common factor, it's a double bracket. I'm setting it equal to 0 because I then have to solve it. There's only, for it to factorize nicely, okay, with nice whole numbers, there's only one thing I can do, and that would be to put 5x here and x here. Okay, I can switch them around, but that just gives me the answer but flipped. But it's the same thing, just like 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. Then I need to try some numbers that multiply. So I've now got my 5x squared. That's brilliant. I need to find some numbers that multiply together to give 2. But they don't add to give 7 because I've got this interesting combination going on because I'm going to do 5x times this one over here and x times this one over here. So forget about the 7 for the moment. Just try the numbers that multiply to give 2. And that's either going to be 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. That's actually the only possibility. So this question is not as bad as it might first look. Right, if I do 5x times this, I need to have my understanding of crab claws. 5x times 2, I'm going to get 10x. And then if I do x times 1, I'm going to get x. And there's no way that I could get 7x from that, so I'm just going to put a little cross by it. The other one's going to work, I can guarantee it already. 5x times 1, that's going to be 5x. And x times 2, that's going to give me 2x. Those will add together to give me 7x. So basically, I can definitely put in 5x plus 2 and x plus 1 equals 0. And if I multiply that out, I would get back to this, trust me. But like the whole solution process is a case of understanding these things. Okay, I'm not done. I now need to solve it. To solve two things multiplied together to give 0, it must either be that this bracket is equal to 0, 5x plus 2 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0. It's quite standard to people to solve this by just taking the negative of the answer, but it's also important to understand why. I'm going to get x equals minus 1. Okay, here I've got a bit more to do. I'm going to get 5x equals minus 2, and then x equals minus 2 over 5. So I basically I flipped it round actually and then divided through by 5. That is a quick way of doing it, but it is important to understand the process as well. And that is going to be the answer. Now I did promise a sneak way, and I'm not condoning the right word. I'm not saying to do it this way. My strong advice is to do practice of factorizing where the number's not 1, and just keep practicing until you're like this with it. But just a little sneak way that you can do. I'm going to regret going through this, but I've heard people use this, especially at A level sometimes when there's a function on your calculator. Technically, you can have this on your calculator at GCSE, but you might not have it. You can just use a formula which it does the quadratic formula for you. So I'm basically going to do the quadratic formula to get my answer. What I can do is I can just use it. I can do fraction minus b, which is minus 7, plus or minus, I'm doing the plus, b squared, which is 7 squared, minus 4ac, 4 times 5 times 2, divided by 2a, that's going to be 10, and that'll give me as an answer minus 2/5. Now that is the answer, but I wouldn't get marks for that because I haven't shown it, but I could get it, couldn't I? I could get that as the answer, x equals minus 2/5. I could do the same for the minus in the, let's do it just to show you. Okay, if I use the same quadratic formula, then I can make it a minus and I can get the minus 1. Done. So how does that help me get back to the factorization? Because actually what I've shown is if I've got the solutions, then I've sort of shown that using my knowledge that I can factorize it to this. Because that's what you do when you get from the factorization to the solution, you just change the sign around. So I've basically changed the sign back around and then factorized it. But I can see that this isn't going to work because I need a 5x squared. So although this is a factorization and it's equal to 0, I need to make a slight modification. I need to times this left-hand one through by 5. And that would leave me with this, which is the correct factorization. So I'm regretting showing you this to some extent, but it does work. It kind of, I don't regret it because it does show some understanding between the solution and the factorization, and the fact that you can go from the solution back to the factorization, but you have to be a bit careful. So I'm glad I talked about it from that point of view. But I'm just going to say to finish, learn how to factorize, practice. It is a hard skill at GCSE, I think. It's a case of practicing. In this particular case, there's not many combinations, but sometimes there are.